Can you imagine walking into your home, expecting chaos, only to be stopped dead in your tracks by a moment so tender it rips your heart open? This is the kind of story that'll make you cry, smile, and question everything you thought you knew about the people around you. Picture a dad, bone-tired from months of grueling work abroad, sneaking into his house in the dead of night, desperate to see his little boy. He's braced for the worst, his toddler's cries piercing the silence, a house in disarray. But what he finds instead? His maid, a woman he barely knows, holding his son like he's her own, her voice weaving a soft lullaby that calms the storm of tears. It's raw, it's real, and it's about to take you on an emotional roller coaster. What happens next will warm your heart and make you rethink trust, love, and the unexpected heroes in our lives. Stick with me, because this story is going to hit you right in the feels. Let's set the stage. John, a single dad in his early 30s, was no stranger to sacrifice. His job as a contractor took him halfway across the world, far from his 2-year-old son, Liam. 3 months away felt like a lifetime, each day a battle against the ache in his chest. Liam was his world, his goofy grin, his tiny hands, the way he'd squeal, "Dada," when John walked through the door. But life wasn't kind to John. Liam's mom had left when he was just a baby, leaving John to juggle fatherhood and a demanding job that paid the bills. Every night, alone in a cramped hotel room, John would scroll through photos of Liam, his heart breaking as he counted down the days until he could hold him again. Maria entered their lives 6 months ago. She was the maid, hired through a local agency to keep the house in order. John wasn't rolling in money, he couldn't afford a fancy nanny or a live-in housekeeper. Maria was affordable, with glowing references, and that was enough for him. She came twice a week, scrubbing floors, folding laundry, and occasionally lending a hand to the nanny, Sarah, who watched Liam full-time. Maria was quiet, almost invisible, slipping in and out of the house with a polite smile. In her late 40s, with streaks of gray in her dark hair, she'd immigrated from Mexico years ago. John didn't know much else about her. To him, she was just the maid, someone who kept the chaos at bay while he was gone. But life has a funny way of flipping the script, doesn't it? John's contract wrapped up early, and he couldn't wait to surprise Liam. No phone call, no heads-up, just a red-eye flight and a heart full of hope. He landed at 2 a.m., the city asleep under a blanket of stars. As he drove home, his hands trembled on the steering wheel. He pictured Liam's sleepy smile, imagined scooping him up for a bear hug, maybe even sneaking out for late-night pancakes at the 24-hour diner down the street. His chest swelled with anticipation. But nothing could have prepared him for what he was about to walk into. It was 3 a.m. when John turned the key in the lock. The house was dark, save for a faint glow spilling from the hallway. Before he could even set his bag down, he heard it, Liam's cries, sharp and frantic, slicing through the quiet like a knife. Every parent knows that sound. It's the kind that twists your gut, makes your heart race, and sends you running. John dropped his duffel, his boots thudding against the floor as he moved toward Liam's room. But then, another sound stopped him cold. A voice, soft, warm, like a melody carried on the wind. It was Maria. John slowed, his steps silent now, as he crept toward the nursery. He peered through the cracked door, and there she was. Maria, sitting in the old wooden rocking chair, cradling Liam in her arms. His little face was red, tears streaking his cheeks, but his sobs were softening, melting into hiccups as Maria sang. The words were in Spanish, gentle and flowing, like a stream washing over jagged rocks. John didn't speak the language, but he didn't need to. The way Maria held Liam, her arms steady, her touch tender, said everything. It was love, pure and simple, wrapping his son in a cocoon of calm. John stood there, rooted to the spot, his breath caught in his throat. He wasn't supposed to be home for another week. Maria had no clue he was watching. This wasn't her job, she wasn't the nanny, wasn't paid to soothe crying toddlers in the middle of the night. She was the maid, hired to clean and leave. Yet here she was, at 3 a.m., pouring her heart into a moment that wasn't hers to own. John's eyes stung, his chest tight with a mix of awe and confusion. Should he step in? Interrupt? Or let this quiet miracle unfold? He chose to wait, and what he saw next turned his world upside down. Let's take a step back and talk about something that hits hard: trust. If you're a parent, you know the feeling. Handing your kid over to someone else is like handing over a piece of your soul. You're trusting a stranger with the one thing you'd die to protect. For John, that weight was crushing. Every time he boarded a plane, leaving Liam behind, his mind raced with what-ifs. What if the nanny got distracted? What if something went wrong? He'd vetted Sarah, the nanny, carefully, checked her references, met her family, even ran a background check. But Maria? She was just the maid. He knew her name, her work schedule, and that was about it. In his mind, she was a background player, not someone he'd trust with Liam's heart. The world doesn't make it easy to trust, either. You've seen the headlines: nannies caught on hidden cameras ignoring kids, caregivers cutting corners, or worse. A 2021 study from the National Institute of Child Health and Human Development found that 68% of parents with young kids feel anxious about leaving them with caregivers, even ones they've thoroughly checked out. Another survey by Care.com in 2023 revealed that 1 in 5 parents have caught a caregiver doing something unexpected, sometimes harmless, like sneaking a nap, but other times, it's neglect or worse. John wasn't crazy for worrying. He was a dad in a world where trust is a gamble. So when he saw Maria with Liam, it wasn't just a sweet scene. It was a lightning bolt. This woman, who he'd barely spoken to beyond "thanks for cleaning," was holding his son like he was her own. It shook him to his core. Had he misjudged her? Was she a diamond in the rough, or had he been too quick to box her into a role? This moment forced John to confront a bigger question. How do you trust the people you let into your life, your home, your family? And what happens when someone shatters your expectations, not by letting you down, but by showing up in a way you never imagined? John didn't move. He stayed in the shadows, watching as Maria rocked Liam, her voice steady and soothing. The lullaby faded, and Liam's eyes fluttered shut, his tiny body finally still. Maria didn't rush to leave. She lingered, brushing a damp curl from his forehead, tucking his blanket just so. She whispered something. John couldn't catch the words, but the tenderness in her voice was unmistakable. Then she stood, careful not to wake Liam, and tiptoed toward the door. When she saw John, she gasped, her hand flying to her heart. "Mr. John," she whispered, her eyes wide. "You're home early." John fumbled for words, his mind still reeling. I heard Liam crying. I didn't expect you to be here." Maria's face softened, her shoulders relaxing. She explained in a hushed voice. The nanny, Sarah, had called her an hour ago, frantic. A family emergency had pulled Sarah away, and she couldn't stay. Maria lived just a few blocks over and had a spare key for cleaning days, so she'd rushed over without hesitation. Liam was upset, she said, her voice steady but warm. He needed someone. John's jaw dropped. Maria wasn't on the clock. She wasn't getting paid to be there at 3 a.m. She could have let Sarah figure it out, gone back to bed, and no one would have batted an eye. But she didn't. John pressed her, his voice thick with emotion. "Why did you do this? This isn't your job." Maria looked down, a shy smile tugging at her lips. "I have a son, too," she said. "He's grown now, but I remember those nights, when he'd cry, and I felt like the only one who could make it better. No one should feel alone, not even a little one like Liam." That moment cracked something open in John. Over the next few days, he started talking to Maria, not just about cleaning schedules or laundry, but about her life. She opened up, bit by bit. She'd come to the US in her 20s, a single mom with a young son, Miguel. Life hadn't been easy. She'd worked endless jobs, cleaning houses, washing dishes, babysitting, to keep food on the table. Every dollar went to Miguel, to give him a chance she never had. Now, he was in college, studying to be a nurse, and Maria's pride shone through every word. She didn't boast, she didn't need to. Her quiet strength, forged in years of struggle, said it all. John's view of Maria shifted. She wasn't just the maid anymore. She was a mother, a survivor, someone who'd fought tooth and nail for her kid and still had enough heart to show up for someone else's. Shame crept in as John realized how little he'd known about her. How many others had he overlooked? How many people had he reduced to a job title, never bothering to see the person behind it? Days passed, but John couldn't shake the image of Maria singing to Liam. It wasn't just that she'd stepped up, it was why. Maria didn't see Liam as the boss's kid, a task to check off. She saw a scared little boy who needed comfort. That's what made it so powerful. It wasn't about a paycheck or a job description. It was about being human, about seeing someone's pain and choosing to act. Research backs this up. A 2022 study in the Journal of Social Psychology found that unexpected acts of kindness don't just help the person on the receiving end, they ripple outward, changing everyone involved. When Maria chose to show up for Liam, it wasn't just a gift to him. It was a reflection of her heart, her values, her life. For John, it was a wake-up call. He'd been so buried in his own struggles, work, bills, the guilt of being a single dad, that he'd stopped looking for the good in others. Maria's kindness forced him to see the world differently. John started small. He talked to Maria more, asking about her day, her son, her dreams. He raised her pay, not as a pat on the back, but because he realized she was worth so much more than he'd been giving her. He invited her to stay for dinner sometimes, and Liam's face would light up when she walked in. Maria's lullabies became a nightly ritual, her voice a comfort that Liam craved. John even learned a few of the songs, stumbling over the Spanish words but laughing with Liam as they sang together. But it wasn't all sunshine. John's guilt gnawed at him. Every time he packed for another trip, he felt like he was abandoning Liam. Watching Maria step in so effortlessly only deepened his doubts. Was he enough for his son? Could he ever be the dad Liam deserved? Those questions kept him up at night, and if you're a parent, you probably know that ache, the fear that you're falling short, no matter how hard you try. Weeks later, the real test came. John got a call for another job overseas, this one for 6 months. The thought of leaving Liam again made his stomach churn. Sarah, the nanny, was reliable, but she wasn't family. John needed someone who'd love Liam like he did, someone who'd see his son's heart, not just his needs. And then it hit him like a freight train, Maria. One evening, with Liam asleep in the next room, John sat Maria down. His hands shook as he spoke. "Maria, I know this is a big ask, but would you be Liam's full-time caregiver while I'm gone? Not just cleaning, but being there for him, really being there." Maria went quiet, her eyes searching his. For a moment, John thought she'd say no. Then she smiled, tears glistening in her eyes. "Mr. John, I'd be honored." It was a leap of faith. Trusting someone with your kid is never easy, especially when you've spent years building walls around your heart. But Maria had shown John who she was, not with words, but with actions. That night in Liam's room, when she sang away his tears, wasn't a fluke. It was her soul laid bare. John knew Liam would be safe with her, not just fed and bathed, but loved. Over the next 6 months, Maria became family. She sent John daily updates. Videos of Liam chasing bubbles in the backyard, photos of him smearing paint on his cheeks, recordings of her lullabies that made John's heart ache with gratitude. When he finally came home, Liam ran to him, arms wide, but he also ran to Maria, wrapping his little arms around her legs. For the first time, John didn't feel a pang of jealousy. He felt peace, knowing his son was loved in a way he'd never dared hope for. This isn't just a story about a dad and a maid. It's about what happens when we drop our guards and see the people around us for who they are. Maria didn't have to sing to Liam that night. She didn't have to show up at 3 a.m., didn't have to share her story with John. But she did, and it changed everything. It showed John, and it shows us, that kindness often comes from the people we least expect. The quiet ones, the ones we overlook, can be the ones who leave the deepest marks on our hearts. Take this with you, look closer. The people in your life. The coworker you barely talk to, the neighbor you nod at, the person you've written off, might be hiding a heart of gold. Trust isn't just about references or resumes. It's about seeing someone's soul. Maria's was on full display that night, and it built a bridge between her and John that neither saw coming. So next time you're quick to judge someone by their job or their role, think of Maria. Think of a woman who turned a toddler's tears into peace. Think of a dad who learned to trust again. And ask yourself, who's singing to the people in your life when you're not there? Hit that next video for another story that'll make you see the world in a whole new light.